Indy Mogul.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to First Films. My name is Justin. This is the podcast where we discuss with working professionals out here in Hollywood how they got their start, their very earliest work that led to what they're doing now, or just fun stuff they made when they were kids. So with me today is the one and only Freddie W of internets, of all the internets.
and barely a working professional, I should throw in.
Freddie is a filmmaker, internet, I guess old school internet filmmaker.
OG
and,
internet. Yeah, a little bit.
I think you watched some Indie Mogul stuff even way back in the day when you were starting out.
Yeah. I mean, well, it was kind of, if I recall, kind of a tutorial wasteland out there. There wasn't really a lot of good stuff that had anything that was, worthwhile in terms of knowledge.
So we're going to step in the First Film's time machine.
Okay.
Sound effect, associated sound effect. And it's a high-tech podcast.
Oh, it is. Excellent.
I'm curious, so your early films, obviously you do a lot of action stuff,
Yeah.
What were some early films that inspired you? And then if you can remember the first thing you made.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Okay, so early stuff, I remember. So we had a Blockbuster Video in the neighborhood. We actually had, in Normandy Park, Washington, there were 2 Blockbuster Videos.
Whoa.
As I was growing up, there was like a closer, like less stocked one. And if you really wanted more movies, you could go down the street a mile further to the better stocked Blockbuster Video. So like my dad's big into movies. And so I remember just growing up, we would just watch stuff constantly. So it'd be like Friday night, Saturday night, like 2-3 movies a weekend, just like anything and everything. And like my dad doesn't, he wasn't born here. So he doesn't really have an idea of like what the rating system's all about. So I remember one time he was like, yo, like Dustin Hoffman is an incredible actor. You need to see like his movies, and here's 2 movies he did in a row just to show you the range of his acting abilities. And the first movie was The Graduate. I was like, okay, I think I get what's going on. And then the second movie was Midnight Cowboy. I'm like, Dad, I'm 12. Like, but he was all about that. And I remember actually early on, like Face Off was like one of the greatest movies ever made, and still is one of the greatest movies ever made. John Woo stuff, really got into just action movies, like just anything and everything from the action category at Blockbuster. And so, and obviously, like, as a kid, like Star Wars and all that, like we had like the THX VHS tape of Star Wars, and we just like wear that thing out. And I remember like early on, as again, so my dad's like into movies and also kind of a computer geek. So we had a Power Mac, like a Power PC Mac that had what I believe was called, I think it was like a Matrox card, which allowed you to put S-Video into like Mac OS like 8, I think, or 9 at the time.
Okay.
And so we had like a copy of like, I think my uncle had like a copy of Premiere 3.0. I remember 3.0 was like the first version.
3.
Yeah, like super old school.
Right.
And I remember getting tutorials from like, I think it was called Mac Addict, I think was a magazine at the time, and they had like some video tutorial stuff. And I remember like plugging in our Hi8 camera and using it. I actually remember the very first thing that I made, which was plugging in our Hi8 camera. This is after we had taken a vacation to New York, and I made like a vacation video. Like it was like
no explosions.
It was just like, here's what it was. It was like I heard it through the grapevine playing the Motown classic, which took up like 50 megs
Whoa.
on my hard drive, which was insane. And I remember so I remember we had that, and then we had just every transition. Did you want a star wipe? Did you want a cross dissolve? Did you want like every single wipe in the book? And it was just like vacation footage. I remember being like, this is fun. I remember editing that and like putting that together and just setting like a vacation video to music. That was like the first thing that we ever made. And then I remember, so we saw this, this little Hi8 camera. And my brother and I then would start doing like, I started getting to like visual effects, and very specifically, the first thing I did was lightsabers, because I think I saw a tutorial in this magazine, and I was like, okay, cool, I think we can do it. And the way you did it back then was we had this like mini pool cue set, and my brother and I would like put the camera on the tripod and then do like a sword fight in front of it, and then be like, and then I would bring it into Premiere 3.0 or whatever version it was, and then you export as film strip, which would take a sequence and then just build a gigantic tall image.
It
was a single
just like
image.
A bunch of JPEGs.
No, it was just a single tall image, and then I would go in there and like use the paint tools in Photoshop to add in each one of the like lightsaber
Only
frames.
a kid would have enough time
100%.
to do this.
Oh, and it'd be jiggly as heck. Like you just be like, I remember looking at it, seeing how jiggly they were, and being like, I think something's wrong. Like this doesn't look right. And there's no way of previewing it until you actually put it back in importing it as a film strip.
But that's a pretty exciting moment.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, it's like you do it for like 2 hours, and then like you import it, and you're like, this looks like crap.
I remember I found so back in the day, there were like video games where you could dig into their like subfolders and find there was a fighting game, and you could find all the images, all the JPEGs or whatever it was that were the characters. And so I would remember like digging into these games and just completely like changing every frame of a certain character and making my own like, and super, super shitty. But when you kind of figure out hacks like that as a kid, it opens up this whole new world of possibility where all of a sudden your creation's in a video game that you've played before, and it changes.
Yeah,
things.
and it's weird because, actually just to talk about that for a second, what's weird is like now I think games have gotten so like opaque in terms of like where the assets are and stuff like that, and I guess to an extent you still have it like with Minecraft, right? You can do like texture packs and stuff like that. But like there was a weird moment with video games where you could do just like weird stuff. I remember using, I think it was called ResEdit, which was a Mac program which allowed you to edit resources, and you could extract sprites from stuff. Yeah. And like doing that and being like, man, this is so weird, because you could still tinker with the pieces. It wasn't all just sort of wrapped up. Yeah. But that was a lot of fun. So we would again, it's just a huge computer nerd back then too, and the go-to trick in compute. I remember one of the best things to do back in the day, which I don't think kids do anymore. So real quick, if you all wanted to like entertain yourself, is doing the maze of folders. You remember that? You make like one folder and you'd be like, enter here, and then be like left, right, center, and you could like double click a folder and there'd be more folders inside, and you make a whole like folder like thing, and you'd hide all your super secret files, of which case there wasn't any, because this was like dial-up internet, so there wasn't even like porn, like even like you're just like, it was like pre-AO, like there's old school stuff. But yeah, that's how we entertained ourselves on the
that's computer. That's like a choose your own adventure game based on the folder structure.
based in the Finder. Like that's what that was all about. So my brother and I, we were doing, so we weren't really doing like story stuff. It was just more like visual effects test stuff, and like blasters, and like a lot of Star Wars-y kind of stuff early on, and that's what I started out on.
So I'm curious, you starting from these simple visual effects tests, how did you kind of evolve from that into deciding like, hey, let's add a little bit of a story here. Did you remember when that happened? Yeah,
I do. So I remember very specifically because it tied in with the technology at the time, which was the iMac. And I remember going in freshman year of high school, and so this would be the year 2000, and the iMac got the candy, Bondi Blue and et cetera, iMacs were announced, and they had FireWire. And the big thing about them was they had FireWire. You could plug in a digital 8 camera and capture NTSC 720 by 40 or whatever, 640 footage into it. And I remember being like, and I remember we had like a camera at the school I was at, like we had like a little computer lab thing, and they had an iMac, and we could like plug it in, and that was the first like thing that we did, which is I did with a couple of my friends. And it was the end of the year, and we had this computer, and we were like, and we were really obsessed with like we had student organizations at our school, right? So we had our own club, and it started off as just kind of this joke club that we were, like
lightsaber crew.
It was actually based on it was all of our friends from the guys who got Stuntus, man, you're taking me way back there. But it was like for one of the Chinese language classes that we were all taking at the time, and so we just like made this jokey club and made this like, I think it was like a 4-minute video of just like a little action scene of like me infiltrating into like the school and like knocking out some guards and getting out with some secret thing I was trying to get.
Nice.
Just shot around the campus. I remember taking the Metal Gear Solid 2 like sneaking theme and laying it over long portions of it and being like, wow, this syncs up perfectly. You ever get that? Like when you just pull some magic. Yeah, it's incredible, right? It's like the most incredible thing you can do is just pull a random piece of music and then realize that like every cue hits.
Well, the first time that really happened, the first time I really remembered, I was actually editing at Public Access. And so it was like a tape-to-tape system, and it was hard burning in the audio.
As it was doing it?
So I'm watching it play back. I'm like, let's put this song in here. And when those little moments sync up, it's not like I can go in and be like, tweak it afterwards. It's burning it in.
Oh my gosh.
And I just remember just being, it's just magic.
That's insane.
You just feel like, you just feel like the universe is doing your bidding.
Yeah, and then the problem is you're just like, this is the perfect song. This must be it. This has been decided. Yeah, so we would do that, and so we did that for this little thing. We made this, and it was like I don't know, it was an 8-minute video of this like little dumb action scene. And we played it in like our library, which had like a little TV thing that could play back, like S video off of a camera. And we had just our friends there. It was maybe like 150 kids just like hanging out.
You guys had a lot of friends.
It was just, we were a small school, so everyone kind of knew each other. My class was 111 kids. So
wow, that's tiny.
Yeah, so it's like all four classes in high school, or you're talking about 400, 500 kids. So it was just like, after school, it was just like, yeah, let's all just hang out and we just watch this. And so the end of freshman year, I remember being like, this is a lot of fun. I like doing this. And my friend, a guy by the name of Reed, and I, we were like, let's do a movie next year. Like my sophomore, his junior year, let's just do a full feature-length movie. So the summer, we kind of were just thinking about it, and then like basically put it together. And that was my sophomore year, was doing school and then also doing this ridiculous 70-minute like feature film at the same time. And
you guys really started off big.
Well, what's hilarious about that too was, and this was Final Cut 3. One of the things that was happening is we have an assembly every Tuesday, and we would do like a sports team, right? Would want to recruit. They'd be like, yeah, boys soccer wants so and so to get kids in. So like we would be like, cool, we'll make a video for that.
Oh, it's great. So you had like an assignment, a regular, but you also had like an audience.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a volunteer thing where you just be like, because again, small class. So they'd be like, hey, you want to do a thing because we're going to try to recruit for crew or soccer or whatever. So we'd do these little skits and stuff, and we would play them at assemblies. And so that was like very much the taste early on of like making something, playing it for a bunch of people, getting laughs in a room. It was sort of infectious, in that way. And that really kind of got us super into it. It was a mix of like, digital 8 cameras and like, we would go on eBay. I remember eBay was so huge for getting stuff. Like we need a wide
babies.
Oh yeah. Huge. Oh yeah. Well, and also like accessories, right? So we'd be like, well, we need a wide angle lens adapter, and we'd sit on eBay and bid for it.
Yeah.
And I remember, so this is, sophomore year, and this is a very sort of academically rigorous school. But I remember my grades were probably the best sophomore year because I think I had to like time manage doing this movie on the weekends and like getting okay grades.
Otherwise, if you got bad grades,
my parents would be like, you need to stop this crap, right? But we were doing it, and we shot it over the course of I think a couple months over Christmas, because it was the first scene of it was like in a Christmas, like a hotel with Christmas decorations, and then on and on.
Break down what's the plot of this?
The plot of it. Okay, so the plot of it was I'm in it as well, and a bunch of our friends are in it. I'm an FBI agent, and by the way, so this is like a 15-year-old Asian kid, and we're in a drug sting, and as great was we actually had our favorite history teacher, this guy by the name of Mr. Tower, was like the druggie drug dealer, and was we did a whole sting scene in a hotel, and I uncover this plot, which is like he's trying to bring back some shady organizations trying to bring back like a hyper opium, I believe we called it.
Hyper opium.
And then it's like my trials and tribulations as an FBI agent to like find the source and stuff, and very, very ridiculous and very silly.
It's hard being a 15-year-old FBI agent.
Oh, absolutely. The discrimination you face on a daily basis, the ageism you see on the field is really just discouraging and really kind of but we would do just ridiculous things like. It's just stuff that didn't even make sense. We just want to shoot. So it'd be like a scene where it's like I wake up from like a weird, like I dream, I get drugged, I wake up in dream sequence, and then all of a sudden we have like sort of Hard Day's Night style, like everybody, like a whole bunch of people just chasing me down the street, because we had this street between sort of the two campuses, and we just ran it, and we got like, and here's a clever thing about that, and it's sort of something we realize is that when you get everybody to be an extra in your movie, they'll pay for it later on just to see themselves in it. So we pretty much got just about everybody in some like cameo or background role in some point in this crazy movie that
so you're getting location. You're not just filming in like you're going out into town.
We're going out. We're going to. It was all friends' properties, friends' houses. We did one early action scene where my friend was like, he was it was like he had like a big living room with like a little balcony that overlooked it, and there was like a whole gunfight that we did there, diving around and jumping around. We were in Bainbridge, not Bainbridge, Orcas Island, because a friend had a cabin up there. So we're out in the woods. It was snowing. We went up to Snoqualmie for like a quick scene and in snow and it just everywhere. We had a friend who worked at the Bank of America Tower, which is the tallest building in Seattle, and like we went in on a weekend to shoot like stuff, and it was like just all over the school, like all
it's
over.
What like a Jason Bourne movie or like a Bond movie? You got to have your snow part, your jungle part. You're trying to replicate.
You gotta get that production value.
Variety.
You can't mess with that. You gotta get that good production value. But yeah, it's just like just ridiculous and weird and just sort of all over the place. And also one of the things too is the effects, right? So this is like a gun movie, right? There's like gunfights because we're getting John Woo, et cetera, et cetera. So at the time there was a program called Alam DV, which was a junior compositing program, and they had like these effects packs, and just like you were saying with like the video game stuff, you could download those effects packs, and they would just be like JPEGs and PNGs that you could pull out of them and then just drag them into whatever program you want. So like that's where I got a lot of that stuff. And what was crazy was I remember I wasn't huge in the community, but I remember watching a bunch of these videos that these people were doing, and like the rock stars of Alam DV were these two kids from Minnesota named Sam and Nico.
Wow!
And,
so it went all the way back to
So I remember. So one of the crazy sort of things was I remember using one of the an explosion pack that they had shot in Minnesota in our movie. And when I got to college, I was we were all just kind of showing stuff, and I was like, oh, there's a funny little thing, and it was an explosion. And one of the guys on that floor was like, I recognize that explosion. That's my explosion. And the guy's name was Brandon. And that's how I met Brandon, was he saw the high school film that I made, and was like, he was friends with Sam and Nico growing up. So we were all in a weird way orbiting this website, this effects website where I stole a bunch of stuff to use in things, and they were posting up videos, and like it was, and this was at the time when The Matrix had come out.
Ooh.
And Equilibrium had come out, and so both like there were so
Equilibrium.
many. Oh, it's such an underrated movie.
God.
But The Matrix, there were so many like trench coats and shoot dodges and all that stuff. You know what I mean?
And that's 99?
99, I believe, yeah.
Because I remember driving to, I'm from Wisconsin. We drove down to Chicago. We drove 5 hours to see Equilibrium because it wasn't a wide release.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think it was that scene where it's completely dark and you're only...
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And that scene, like, if it was just that scene, it would have been worth a 5-hour drive on its own.
Gosh, yeah. That Equilibrium was super underrated.
But that, again, is like one of those films that just inspires, especially The Matrix, of course, but inspires so many people to really make their own version of it.
No, 100%. And we were like, man, that's so cool. And this is like back when I was also getting into airsoft as a sport too. Ooh. So it's just like, you got prop guns, you got cool things you could do with them, but like, how are you going to do the effects? So that's where really kind of what pushed me down the road of like trying to learn visual effects, was because I wanted to make these kinds of movies and do all these cool gunfights and stuff and do these visual effects things that I saw in these movies. But I couldn't do that as a kid, but I could kind of figure out ways of doing that, you know. And I remembered like all the gun sounds were like Counter-Strike sounds. You pull them from like, it's like just anywhere and everywhere you could find stuff, you would yank it and use it. And so that was the movie, and we put it out at the end of the year. And I remember actually exactly this, because my friend Reed and I, we kept an Excel spreadsheet of like how much we've spent on the movie, and we spent ourselves total about exactly $1,000, give or take.
It's huge.
Which is a huge expenditure of funds, which we made back on our first night. And then the best part about it, this is like to this day, like I think one of my favorite things is we made like $4,000 on the movie. So we had like $3,000, and our school was like, you can't just take money from people. Like, this is not okay.
Were you selling tickets or
we
DVDs?
Sold tickets to it, and we sold DVDs to it. I remember making a DVD in DVD Studio Pro 1.0 and sending it out to Florida to get them pressed and give them to our friends who had paid $10 for it. And I did all the special features and the DVD menu again, the computer nerd side of it helping out, right?
Yes.
Did all the special features and the menu programming and the photos, just the whole.
You must still have one of these somewhere, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I think it's actually even my school's library might still have them. But yeah, all the way back. And at this point, by the way, the DVD might be not readable anymore, because you know how that works, right? It's like if you're not pressing it, it's going to be gone in 10 years. And of course, at the time, I was like, 10 years, like no one's going to see this after 10 years. So we made like $4,000 on this damn movie, and our school was like so not okay, because like we just were taking ticket money. So like you have to like create a club. Like we had, we had started this club, and you have to put it in there. So like, okay, fine. but we're reimbursing ourselves first. And this is us being idiots. What we should have done is we should have reimbursed ourselves significantly. But what we did was we were honest.
Hollywood accounting.
Oh, 100%. This is me. This is why I'm awful at business, because that's what we should have done. We should have just been like, oh yeah, did you spend $2,000 on this? You too, huh? Interesting. Anyway, but I'll always remember this. I remember going upstairs to like the accountants for our school. They had a floor on one of the buildings, and being like, hey, we need to put some money into our club account. And they're like, okay. And we're like, here's a lockbox with like $4,000 in cash.
They're expecting like a handful of nickels.
Yeah. Like and it's like, so here's like a lockbox with just thousands of dollars in like small bills, and here's a printout from our Excel sheet saying like where it's coming from. And they're like, okay, like they're so weirded out by it. But then from that point on, we had this club and these club funds. So from that point on, we would just be like, yo, you guys want to throw a pizza party? It's on the club, baby. We would just draw down from that account for the rest of our time at school. And that we had passed that on to some of our friends as we graduated. But I will note that there was a certain point when there was no more baton to pass the club leadership onto. And I believe that my school absorbed those funds into their general operating expenses, which, as far as I'm concerned, anytime they come to me and they're like, hey, would you like to donate some money? I'm like, yo, I donated like $2,000 to you
gotta
guys.
rename a wing after me.
Yeah, so they still owe me, as far as I'm concerned.
That seems pretty rare to have a profitable high school film. I love you guys just like taking cash at the door.
Yeah, it was I mean, like, nobody, because again, this was the time period, and I think it still is at this point, but like this is the time period when like doing a video for a project got you an auto A. Do you know what I mean? That still is the case.
That's the real, and I think
that's the takeaway.
I've done a bunch of these podcasts, and that comes up over and over again, where it's that teacher who says, and especially before it became when everyone can make a video, when it was a novel thing, and you're like, can I do a video? And the teacher's like, okay, sure. And most of them are just like one take, or it's like even in-camera editing is a little advanced. And they're terrible.
Yeah, and the moment you're like, whoa, you did a whole, whoa, like, it's like they were blown away at the time. I remember
it's sad that time doesn't really exist quite. I'm sure teachers are still impressed, but I feel like now
it's a little bit weird.
It's just different.
It's because it's insane, because it's completely insane at the time.
YouTube has just changed everything. And I think now, I always say that like I feel like, of course, being in a band is still cool, but being a popular YouTuber or creator is like the new being in a band.
So you didn't have, and here's the thing, like, you didn't have that. I remember like talking to some people now and being like, yeah, so-and-so was like big on Instagram and they bought a car in high school, right? Or they're making more money than their parents in high school. And I remember being like,
or even Vine, just like,
really. And the thing is that I found what was interesting just from a social like perspective was like, I was kind of kept to myself, kind of a nerdy dude. But the moment we started doing movie stuff, like, it just changed who you were socially too, because all of a sudden you weren't, like, it was because I think it was such a collaborative medium, it forced it to be in the first place, right? You couldn't just kind of just go off on your own and do your stuff. You kind of had to bring your friends along, and it just became the thing to be like, hey, do you want, after school, let's go do this, and like, let's drive out to here and shoot this thing. And everyone's like, okay, sure. Like, nobody knew, but it was so different, right? It was so novel, and it was an interesting thing, because I think what I noticed was like, wow, I was a different person like freshman year into sophomore year. And
that's a great point. And I think that's something that that I've noticed too, is that people want to play the characters that they're not. You're not going to play yourself in a film. You're not going to be, a shy computer nerd kid. You want to be an action star. You want to be a hero. Yeah. So I often wonder about actors who are typecast. If you're typecast as like the loser, does that affect your,
maybe your mental outlook?
I think that too is like really the early charm of the videos that you made that really made them blow up, was you're, no offense, you're an unlikely action star.
Oh, for sure.
Because it was so awesome looking, and you'd imagine to see someone looking like an action
the fun
star.
Was a lot of the fun of it was, I think, constantly undercutting what you would expect.
I find it also very important that you have a moment where you can premiere your work in front of an audience, because
that was
I
huge.
think if you just would have, I wonder what it's like for people who are huge YouTube successes but have never, it's the abstraction of a million views versus a room with 200 people.
Because I think it's dangerous right now. Honestly, I do. In terms of because even like some of the guys that we talk to who are like even so younger than me, even though they were growing up in a YouTube era, they talk a lot about like even still like they still had stuff they played at school assemblies. Like they still had a thing that they could play out for a bunch of people, and it still happened. And one of the things that I think that you lose when you talk about putting things online now and it's just out into the void is it's super easy to just fall into the trap of like, oh, I'm just going to make this, and you don't have a deep enough feedback that all you're making at the end of the day is just like pandering, right? You're just kind of making exactly what everyone wants you to make. And I think you see even a lot of YouTube channels like still or kind of burn out in that way because it's like they do one thing, they do it over and over again, and then the moment they're like, well, I want to try something else, everyone's just like, no, I'm just here for this. And they don't get away from that. I mean, we were always kind of self-consciously trying to avoid that. We even still have that problem, right? Of like, this is what the expectation is. And I remember there was a comment recently that kind of really solidified and I understood it. And I got like, okay, I get this is how people like look at YouTube now. There was a guy who said, we were like, we did like a different video. And one of the comments was like, no, this is a good video. It's just that, and this is the analogy he made. It's just that if I'm listening to a jazz station on Pandora, I don't want to like listen to classical music. And I was like, oh, that's the difference. You're not looking at a YouTube channel as here's a bunch of like artistic types or people creating something. You're looking at it as endpoint for you. I just want jazz. I just want to watch rock and roll right now. I just want this one thing, right? And that's all I want. And so if it's different, well, that's not what I signed up for. I just want this. Like that's your expectations from that experience is totally different than I think what it would be otherwise. And I think that there's something about being in person and being in front and being able to say like, hey, this is a thing that I am making, and in that context that actually is more helpful to you as a creator. And it doesn't necessarily just pigeonhole you into just saying like, oh, you just got to do one thing over and over again.
So I'm curious about the transition from high school and the high school film into when you found the people you wanted to keep creating with them, and when it became just like, hey, I do this for fun, to when it became like, oh, I do this and this is me and it's my job. Yeah.
So I think, through high school, having done a lot of these movies now, it's like, okay, this is something that's a lot of fun. This is something I enjoy doing. And this is something I think I want to pursue as a career path potentially. I made the decision to be like, okay, I want to go to film school. And it was film school. And then, it was like, so the high school I went to was like a hardcore high school. I think it's like some ridiculous percentage go to Ivy League.
Hardcore high school.
Hardcore high school. Yeah.
That could be a little weird. Maybe that's a bad, I thought that was an awesome title. That's a bad. I was like, that's a bad. That won't get the wrong SEO. You get some weird ones there. But like a lot of people go to Ivy Leagues. It's very academically oriented. And so I was like one of, I think like 3 people in the class who applied to a non academic, sort of institution in the sense of like doing an art major, essentially is really what we're talking about, right? And it was funny too because all my friends, I think the average number of colleges they applied to was something like 11 or 12, and I was like, there's like 5 film schools out there. I'll just go to those 5. Like I guess like those are the ones I'll aim at. Florida State,
Loyola, Chapman, USC, and NYU, and that was basically it. And then also like LA Film School, like as the community college has one too. And it's like, okay, like here we go, cool. So that was what I think that was when I started sort of taking it seriously and just sort of and deciding to go to film school and come and eventually getting accepted here down in USC, coming down to LA and then doing the thing here where I met a whole bunch of people in film school, some very very cool people and some very very lame people. I think it's the nature of the thing.
That's life.
Yeah, and I think by and large the class that I had actually was a really really cool class. I remember talking to some people and being like, yeah, you guys actually are very much more cohesive class compared to some of the other years where everyone's like at their throats and wanting to show off and stuff like that, which I was just like, man, like what is the point? I never expected to run into
the idea other people's success equals their failure.
Yeah, and it's like, man, you guys are like either taking it so hardcore that's just not fun anymore. This is kind of why I wanted to get into it, because it's just more fun. It was more fun than doing, I just couldn't imagine. I guess one of the things I thought about was like I couldn't imagine doing a job where I would know exactly where I would be and what I would be doing in 5 years time.
Film in some ways is that, where it's you start in the ladder, and I've even heard anecdotes of someone who was an assistant editor, and they were saying like, and this is a friend telling a story of an assistant editor they knew, and they're like, if I just keep working, I'm going to move up to editor, and him talking to someone else, this assistant editor's boss, and they say, well, well, he's such a great assistant editor. He's never going to be an editor because he's too good at being an assistant editor. But he doesn't know that. And I'm just like, God, it just that ladder does exist in the traditional film world.
And I think the big thing to keep in mind there is like, and the thing I always remember is like, no, and I remember being like, yeah, there's no path to director. The only way you become a director is you just become a director. You just start and you just do it. There's no such thing as working your way up. And that's true, I think, for every job in there. It's like, if you want to do what you want to do, you just do that. And then you have to just get better at that. And that's the only way you get there, which is kind of an interesting sort of way of thinking about it, right? Because like, I think high school and like college kind of teaches you like, oh yeah, you go from one thing to another, you build up everything from
English 101 to 102 to 201, however,
to the course loads, or to, just the way that, you think about promotion and stuff like that. It's like, and no, this is just not how this industry works at all.
Did you graduate from film school?
Yeah.
Okay, you did the whole thing. It wasn't like YouTube and then you quit.
Yeah, so it was all the way through, and YouTube. So it was kind of a weird path to YouTube because it was the middle of college when Guitar Hero came out, and we made like a ridiculous Guitar Hero video because it was for at the time a contest. It was like a contest to be like, who can do the best Guitar Hero thing. And I remember like it was like a Guitar Center gift card and stuff. I was like so psyched for it.
Just kidding.
They never judged the damn contest, which really annoys me. I think, like, because I was like, I remember being like, when are they going to judge this? Like, I think we won this. I think this is the best video that we got. And it's just like, and in the end, they never judged the contest, but the video started to just go like old school, early viral. And I remember looking at it and being, wow, I got 10,000 views. And then when I hit 100,000, having the realization of like, it doesn't just stop getting views. This thing just keeps going. We're like, oh yeah, weird.
People see a video especially then, people see a video with that many views and it just intrinsically they want to watch it.
Yeah.
So they've already
something.
seen it.
Yeah, exactly. So the YouTube channel back then and had that, but wasn't really posting stuff to it. It was just like, occasional visual effects tests or what have you, and it was only about 2010 after graduating, after having been taking some time for a while at 20th Century Fox, after spending some time, being an assistant editor at a really ridiculous like web startup, that we had, that we're like, oh, we should do YouTube, So that was kind of the long and torturous path. And then when we did YouTube, the idea instead of starting a new channel was like, well, we had this one channel and it's got 5,000 subscribers on it because of this stupid Guitar Hero video. Well, let's just start from there.
And so I think one question people always have is, advice for filmmakers. I'd love to hear if you have a thing you feel like really led you to doing what you, and in some ways I think that kind of point to being a director where you just kind of have to do the thing you want to do.
Yeah, I think you have to do the thing that you want to do. I think that you have to not be satisfied with your work. I think in the end, the thing about movies is that like nobody will give you a straight answer except yourself. Like I can tell you the number of times I've been to like movie premieres for like friends' movies, and like you're just like, this movie is pretty bad, and then you go out into the lobby and everyone's like, this was amazing, good job, congratulations, right? It's like, but then as soon as they leave the doors, everyone's like, yeah, that was garbage. And I was like, well, okay, if this is how you're not gonna get feedback from anybody else. Yeah. It's up on you to be able to look at something and say like, this is not good, or can be improved, or how should I improve it? And I think you get that knowledge just by watching movies. Like you just have to watch anything and everything, and I think the number of people who want to get into movies and have the feeling of, sometimes I hear this where it's like they don't want to watch movies because they don't want they want their ideas tainted. It's like, that's awful. Like that's really bad. Like you can't have that mindset. Like, no, you have to get over the fact that it's like, no, you're not that special, and this is as much an art as a business as a craft as well. And you don't just, like if you're going to be a blacksmith, you're not going to sit there and be like, well, I'm never going to work on lesser swords because I'm just going to make one totally dope sword. Like anybody was going to be like, yeah, but if you haven't practiced on like lesser swords, you ain't gonna make no dope sword. Like it's like music, right? It's like you can't claim to just be able to play a guitar without practicing and be able to be like, I'm just gonna rock this solo. It's like you've never, like, if like, there's no such thing. I'll put it this way too. There's no such thing as a musician who doesn't listen to music. There's no such thing as a jazz musician who doesn't seek out all the, like the old sort of greats.
You gotta be obsessed with it.
You gotta be obsessed with it. And if you're not, that's fine. But if you're not, then you got to take a moment and think like, well, maybe I want to get into this for not the right reasons.
Right.
You have to think about, like, yeah, I think it's so easy nowadays to get into it for the wrong reasons. I think because the allure, and that's always been the case with film, but even so more so now than ever, but the allure of easy fame and recognition and riches, maybe, that YouTube money, that Instagram money, like, it's out there, and so people I think gravitate to like, oh, I want to. And really quick, when I say this, I'm making a difference between like people who make movies and people who are like sort of internet celebrity types, because I think that it is actually two very different skill sets. They use movies and video to kind of get there, but it's not what I'm talking about here, which is like the art and craft of making movies. And I'm a little bit bummed out because I remember when YouTube first came out, everybody was like, this is going to be where the next Spielberg is found, right? And the truth is, now looking back at it, it's not going to be where the next Spielberg is found. It's going to be where the next X is found, and X is a new type of celebrity. And I think it's too easy, right? You always look at everything in the lens of what you already know. So like in the same way, when movies first came out, everyone's like, oh, this is just going to be theater, right? On a screen, or, and it's the same way when YouTube and online movies come out. It's like, oh, this is just going to be like TV or movies on computers. And it's like, no, this gave rise to a totally different thing.
And that's why I think 360 is so interesting now too, because it's that same evolution where it's like, what is it? Is it theater? Is it this or that? And it's changing.
Yeah. And in the end, I think that's I think an important question to ask yourself, which is what do you actually want to do, and what do you actually want to accomplish there, and what's your reasons for getting into it? Because if you're getting into it again to just be like, oh, I want to be able to get a bunch of views, it's like you probably can, like, right? If you're smart and you
there's a playbook,
there's a way of doing it. There's a way of doing it. You can get a bunch of views on stuff, but I don't think it's worthwhile. And for us, I'm actually honestly in a weird way kind of thankful, and that technology and timing and luck has worked out for me in the way that it did. And I think a lot of my sort of contemporaries, which is we didn't necessarily have to grow up with high school friends being, potentially millionaires and getting into it that way. We grew up with wanting to just make movies and starting there. And I think that wanting to tell stories, and I think that starting with that has a little more longevity than I think the sort of endless pursuit that's been there since the beginning, which is just wanting to be famous, which can take on such a myriad of forms that I don't think are necessarily long lasting in any sort of way, shape, or form. So if you want to make movies, I think you gotta be obsessed with movies. And if you're not, then I don't know if you actually like movies.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You should find a job, or or if it's not, it's okay if you don't. If it's not for you. It really is. I always think that like it's like the saying, you are what you eat. I feel like especially in film, it's kind of you are what you make. So if you want to be a science fiction director, but you just direct cereal commercials, no one's going to hire you to make a science fiction movie until you do it yourself. And it's having the agency just to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to put $1,000 into it and maybe I'll get 4,000 back. But you have to try.
Yeah, exactly. And I would even, again, like I said, I would even go further back. I would even go like, do you actually like movies? Are you actually entertained and psyched for TV and movies, and you consume it like everything, or not? Right. Like, and I think the people who, again, like I said, it's if you don't have that, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to really kind of find your foothold here.
Well, thank you so much for the time.
Absolutely, man.
Hopefully it brought you back to...
Yeah, a little bit. Now I want to go back home and call my mom and be like, yo, where are them high 8 tapes at?
If you find him, we'll include
I'll
some clips
send you a link if I
podcast.
find them. Oh, for sure.
And if people have been living under a rock, tell them where to find you on the internet.
We are Rocket Jump. We have a website, rocketjump.com. We have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/rocketjump, the various associated Twitters and stuff like that. Video Game High School, seasons 1 through 3. You can watch on YouTube or on Netflix. And our upcoming show, a show called Dimension 404, which is going to be a sci-fi anthology show, is going to be available here very soon on Hulu for people in the US, and for sort of the international sort of non-Hulu folks, we'll have answers for you very soon as to where you can get that. Complicated process, international licensing and all that. But that's our next big show. It's coming out very soon here. So that's who we are.
And RocketJump Film School, which is really excellent.
And we've kind of taken a page out of your book a little bit in terms of wanting to do some film education. So if you're a film nerd, video essays, actual practical kind of like on set advice from people who are working in the industry. We try and break down like not necessarily how to do things, but more why you're doing things, right? And really trying to get to the base principles behind it. And you can find that at youtube.com/RJ Film School.
Great. Well, thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you very much.
Let's get back to whatever you do. Play Guitar Hero.
Barely working is the key term there.